The golden age of Hollywood conjures images of glamour, sophistication, and carefully crafted public personas. From the 1920s through the 1960s, studios meticulously controlled their stars' images, presenting them as paragons of elegance and refinement. But behind those polished veneers existed a very different reality. Many of the era's most beloved stars were notorious for their colorful language, ribald humor, and shocking behavior that would make even today's celebrities blush. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on Hollywood's golden era to reveal 18 classic stars whose off-screen personas were wildly at odds with their carefully manufactured public images. From profanity-laced tirades to outrageous on-set antics, these icons of the silver screen proved that vulgarity in Hollywood didn't begin with the modern era. Number 18. Carole Lombard, 1908 to 1942. Often remembered as the queen of screwball comedy and the beloved wife of Clark Gable, Carole Lombard cultivated a public image of sophisticated elegance, but those who worked with her knew a very different woman. Lombard was famous in Hollywood circles for her spectacularly colorful vocabulary that would make a sailor blush. Far from the refined lady portrayed in fan magazines, the real Lombard peppered her conversation with profanities and spoke with the candor of a truck driver. Director Howard Hawks, who worked with Lombard on 20th Century, recalled that she could swear like no one else in Hollywood. According to Hawks, during one particularly frustrating scene, Lombard unleashed a tirade of expletives so creative that the entire crew broke into spontaneous applause when she finished. Newspaper columnist Adela Rogers St. John's once wrote that Lombard spoke like a stable boy but looked like an angel, a contradiction that only enhanced her charm among Hollywood insiders. Her earthy language was so notorious that when she visited the White House, First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt was reportedly warned in advance about Lombard's colorful vocabulary. Even Lombard's romance with Clark Gable featured her characteristic vulgarity. When asked by a reporter what attracted her to Gable, she allegedly replied with a scandalously explicit comment about his physical attributes that was far too risque to print in family newspapers. The exact quote has been lost to history, but contemporaries described it as anatomically specific and jaw-droppingly frank. Number 17. Tallulah Bankhead, 1902 to 1968. Perhaps no Golden Age star was more notorious for shocking behavior than Tallulah Bankhead. The Alabama-born actress made headlines not just for her theatrical performances but for her outrageous personality and uninhibited lifestyle that defied the conservative mores of her era. Bankhead's vulgarity was legendary even in an industry accustomed to colorful characters. She reportedly greeted people with the phrase, "Hello, darling," followed by a stream of profanities delivered in her distinctive drawl. Her vocabulary was so consistently blue that fellow actress Estelle Winwood once remarked, "She knows every four-letter word in the English language and uses them all in every sentence." Bankhead's penchant for shocking behavior extended beyond her vocabulary. She was infamous for disrobing at parties, conducting interviews while naked in her bathtub, and making outrageously suggestive comments to both men and women. During the filming of Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat, she reportedly refused to wear underwear while shooting scenes on a ladder, causing considerable distraction among the crew. When a concerned crew member reported this issue to Hitchcock, asking what to do about Miss Bankhead's lack of underwear, the director reportedly replied with his characteristic dry wit, "That's not a problem for wardrobe, that's a problem for hairdressing." In her autobiography, Bankhead recounted her notorious reputation without apology. She wrote candidly about her numerous affairs, her heavy drinking, and her drug use. When criticized for her behavior, she famously responded, "I'm as pure as the driven slush," a quip that perfectly captured her defiant attitude toward conventional morality. Number 16. Humphrey Bogart, 1899 to 1957. Humphrey Bogart may have played tough guys with hearts of gold on screen, but off-screen his language and behavior could be decidedly less gentlemanly. Behind the romantic hero of Casablanca was a man known for his heavy drinking, practical jokes, and salty vocabulary. Director John Huston, a close friend of Bogart's and no stranger to rough behavior himself, once commented that Bogart swore like he had invented the practice. During the filming of The African Queen in Uganda, Bogart's profane outbursts reportedly echoed through the jungle whenever equipment malfunctioned or when the heat became unbearable. Even in his legendary romance with Lauren Bacall, Bogart maintained his rough edges. Bacall later wrote in her memoir that when they first met, she was shocked by his vocabulary but soon grew accustomed to it. According to Bacall, Bogart referred to almost everyone, friend or foe, with colorful insults that she found both shocking and oddly endearing. As the unofficial leader of the original Rat Pack, which he called his Holmby Hills Rat Pack, back. Bogart presided over legendary drinking sessions where the language grew increasingly colorful as the night wore on. His friend and fellow actor David Niven recalled that Bogart could curse for 30 minutes without repeating himself, a skill that both impressed and horrified Hollywood's elite. Bogart was especially uninhibited on his beloved boat, the Santana. There, away from the scrutiny of studios and fans, he would drink heavily and unleash tirades against Hollywood producers, directors who had crossed him, and anyone else who had earned his ire. These profanity-laced diatribes became so legendary that invitations to sail on the Santana were highly coveted among those who appreciated Bogart's unfiltered personality. Number 15. Joan Crawford, 1904 to 1977. To the public, Joan Crawford projected an image of sophisticated elegance. To her colleagues in Hollywood, she revealed a very different side, one marked by an explosive temper and a vocabulary that could strip paint from walls. Crawford's temper tantrums on set were legendary, often punctuated with strings of profanities that shocked even veteran crew members. Director Vincent Sherman, who worked with Crawford on several films, recalled that when displeased, she could unleash a torrent of obscenities that would make a longshoreman cringe. During the filming of Mildred Pierce, Crawford reportedly clashed with director Michael Curtis, resulting in a heated exchange in which, according to witnesses, Crawford demonstrated an astonishing command of profanity. After one particularly explosive argument, Curtis allegedly remarked, "I didn't know ladies knew words like that." Crawford's vulgar outbursts weren't limited to professional conflicts. At a high society party in the 1940s, when a socialite made a snide remark about Crawford's humble beginnings, the actress reportedly responded with a devastating insult delivered with such crude specificity that several guests reportedly gasped. The exact words have been lost to history, but the incident became a cautionary tale about crossing the seemingly refined star. Perhaps nowhere was Crawford's vulgar side more evident than in her famous feud with Bette Davis. The two actresses exchanged increasingly crude insults over decades, with Crawford reportedly referring to Davis using anatomical slurs too explicit for public repetition. When asked about the feud years later, Davis dryly commented, "She really ought to have been a truck driver. Her language gave her away." Number 14. John Barrymore, 1882 to 1942. Known as the Great Profile and part of America's most prestigious acting dynasty, John Barrymore possessed a reputation for remarkable Shakespearean performances. Offstage, however, he was equally known for his outrageous behavior, shocking pranks, and extraordinarily vulgar wit. Despite his aristocratic bearing and classical training, Barrymore had a penchant for shocking high society with his crude humor and ribald stories. During formal dinner parties, he would often wait for a lull in conversation before telling a shockingly inappropriate joke or anecdote, delighting in the scandalized reactions of his fellow guests. Writer Gene Fowler, a close friend of Barrymore's, recounted in his memoir that the actor's vocabulary was colorfully obscene and that he took particular pleasure in using vulgar language in the most inappropriate settings. According to Fowler, Barrymore once delivered a flowery toast at a dignified industry banquet that began with poetic eloquence and ended with a string of profanities so shocking that several elderly studio executives nearly collapsed. As his alcoholism worsened, so did Barrymore's vulgar behavior. He was known to expose himself publicly when intoxicated and would proposition women using language so explicit that it couldn't be hinted at even in the most scandal-hungry tabloids of the era. During one Broadway performance, he reportedly appeared on stage visibly drunk and proceeded to improvise lines filled with obscenities until he was forcibly removed. Fellow actor W.C. Fields, himself no stranger to profanity, once remarked that Barrymore's vulgarity had the paradoxical quality of being both shocking and poetic. Fields added that Barrymore could make obscenity sound like Shakespeare and Shakespeare sound obscene, a talent that both impressed and appalled his contemporaries. Number 13. Bette Davis, 1908 to 1989. Those legendary eyes weren't the only memorable thing about Bette Davis. While she portrayed sophisticated, strong-willed women on screen, off-screen she was known for her blunt speech, cutting remarks, and impressive command of profanity. Davis made no attempt to hide her rough edges, once famously declaring, "When a man gives his opinion, he's a man. When a woman gives her opinion, she's a bitch." This characteristic frankness extended to her vocabulary, which was peppered with expletives and colorful insults delivered in her distinctive clipped manner. On film sets, Davis was notorious for her demanding nature and volcanic temper. When displeased with a director's instructions or a co-star's performance, she would unleash blistering critiques filled with language that shocked even veteran film crews. Director William Wyler, who directed Davis in several films including Jezebel and The Letter, once commented that working with Davis was like being trapped in a sailor's locker room during a storm. Her confrontations with studio executives were particularly profane. During one legendary argument with Jack Warner, Davis reportedly unleashed such a stream of obscenities that Warner, no delicate flower himself, was left momentarily speechless. When he finally recovered, he allegedly remarked, "I didn't know ladies used words like that," to which Davis snapped back with an even more colorful retort. As Davis aged, her language became even more uninhibited. During a 1987 interview, when asked about the current state of Hollywood, she delivered a critique so profane that much of it had to be edited out before broadcast. The interviewer later described it as a masterclass in creative obscenity from a true artist of the form. Number 12. Errol Flynn, 1909 to 1959. Errol Flynn embodied the swashbuckling hero on screen, but off-screen, his behavior was anything but heroic. The Australian actor's debauchery was so legendary that the phrase, "in like Flynn," became slang for sexual success. Flynn's vulgarity was multifaceted, encompassing crude language, sexual exploits, and outrageous behavior that scandalized even Hollywood's most libertine circles. His autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, barely scratched the surface of his true behavior, as much of it was considered too explicit to print even in a tell-all memoir. Flynn's drinking companions recalled that his conversation was liberally sprinkled with nautical profanities learned during his early seafaring days. Actor David Niven, who briefly shared a house with Flynn, wrote in his memoirs that Flynn's vocabulary was imaginatively obscene and that he used four-letter words as punctuation. Flynn's notorious yacht, the Sirocco, was the site of countless debauched parties. According to Hollywood legend, he had installed two-way mirrors in guest bathrooms and peepholes in bedroom walls. When confronted about these voyeuristic modifications, Flynn reportedly responded with a vulgar quip so explicit that it couldn't be repeated in polite company. Flynn's crude behavior extended beyond words. His practical jokes often crossed the line into vulgarity. During one Hollywood party, he reportedly urinated in the punch bowl, then watched with amusement as guests continued to drink from it. When studio executives attempted to rein in his behavior, Flynn would respond with obscene gestures or explicitly worded dismissals. Director Vincent Sherman, who worked with Flynn on his last major film, The Adventures of Don Juan, recalled that by then, Flynn's once charming roguishness had deteriorated into something darker. Sherman noted that Flynn's on-set language had become consistently and creatively obscene, and that many female crew members requested reassignment to avoid his crude comments and inappropriate behavior. Number 11. Betty Hutton, 1921 to 2007. To moviegoers of the 1940s and early 1950s, Betty Hutton was America's energetic sweetheart, starring in musicals and comedies with boundless enthusiasm. Behind that perky persona, however, lurked a surprisingly profane personality that shocked her co-stars. Hutton's volcanic energy wasn't just reserved for her performances. Off-camera, she was known for explosive outbursts of temper, often punctuated with strings of profanities that contrasted sharply with her wholesome screen image. During the filming of The Greatest Show on Earth, director Cecil B. DeMille was reportedly stunned by Hutton's colorful vocabulary when things went wrong during difficult trapeze scenes. Bob Hope, who worked with Hutton in several films, once quipped that she had the face of an angel and the vocabulary of a stevedore. According to Hope, Hutton's language was particularly colorful when she felt nervous or under pressure, leading to some memorable outbursts just before difficult musical numbers. Hutton's autobiography hints at her volatile nature without fully revealing the extent of her profane outbursts. However, crew members from her films have shared stories of her impressive vocabulary. One assistant director recalled that when Hutton stumbled during a complex dance number, she unleashed a 30-second tirade of obscenities so creative that several veteran stagehands wrote them down for future use. Later in life, after finding religion and stepping away from Hollywood, Hutton became more restrained in her language. In a rare 1980s interview, she acknowledged her former penchant for profanity, saying, "I had a mouth that would make a sailor blush. The contrast between my image and my actual behavior was, well, let's just say it was dramatic." Number 10. Clark Gable, 1901 to 1960. As Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind, Clark Gable delivered the then shocking line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." Off-screen, Gable's language was considerably less restrained, earning him a reputation as one of Hollywood's most proficient cursors. Unlike some stars who maintained a genteel public persona, Gable made little effort to hide his rough edges. Having worked as a lumberjack, oilfield worker, and other blue-collar jobs before finding success as an actor, Gable brought a working man's vocabulary to Hollywood that shocked the more refined members of the film community. Director Victor Fleming, who worked with Gable on both Gone with the Wind and Red Dust, recalled that Gable swore with the casual frequency of breathing. According to Fleming, when Gable was informed that his famous "damn" line in Gone with the Wind might need to be censored, the actor responded with a string of alternatives so profane that "damn" suddenly seemed tame by comparison. Gable's hunting and fishing companions noted that his vocabulary became particularly colorful during these expeditions. Fellow actor Robert Taylor, who often joined Gable on hunting trips, commented that Gable could curse for 10 minutes straight without repeating himself, a skill Taylor attributed to Gable's pre-Hollywood days in the oil fields. During his service in the Army Air Corps and World War II, Gable reportedly fit right in with the military men's rough language. One officer recalled that Gable could outswear any drill sergeant and that his creative profanity actually earned him respect among the enlisted men, who were surprised to find that the King of Hollywood spoke just like them. Number 9. Jean Harlow, 1911 to 1937. With her platinum blonde hair and sensual image, Jean Harlow epitomized Hollywood glamour in the early 1930s, yet behind the carefully crafted sex symbol persona was a woman whose crude humor and salty language startled even her most worldly colleagues. Despite her refined appearance, Harlow grew up in a household where colorful language was common. Her stepfather, Marino Bello, was known for his crude expressions, and Harlow apparently absorbed his vocabulary along with his boisterous personality. On film sets, she would often shock directors and crew members by casually dropping profanities into conversation with the ease of someone discussing the weather. Clark Gable, who starred with Harlow in several films, once remarked that she swore like a man, but looked like a beautiful angel, a contradiction he found endlessly amusing. According to Gable, Harlow would sometimes deliberately use her most shocking language when meeting stuffy studio executives or society matrons, delighting in their discomfort. Harlow's practical jokes often veered into vulgarity as well. During the filming of Red Dust, she allegedly appeared on set wearing no underwear beneath her costume, causing considerable distraction among the crew. When director Victor Fleming discreetly suggested she might want to be more fully clothed, Harlow reportedly responded with a profane quip that left the veteran director momentarily speechless. Writer Anita Luce, who worked on scripts for several of Harlow's films, recalled that the actress had a vocabulary that would make a truck driver envious, but noted that Harlow's profanity somehow never seemed truly offensive because it was delivered with such innocent charm. According to Luce, Harlow could say the most shocking things in that baby doll voice of hers and somehow make them sound almost ladylike. Number 8. W.C. Fields, 1880 to 1946. W.C. Fields crafted a screen persona as a misanthropic curmudgeon who battled children, dogs, and wives with equal disdain. Off-screen, the real Fields was even more caustic, with a penchant for profanity that matched his legendary alcohol consumption. Fields made little attempt to hide his fondness for vulgar language. When once asked by a reporter if he had any rules for living, Fields reportedly replied with a statement so obscene that the journalist could only render it as a series of unprintable suggestions. Even by the standards of vaudeville, where Fields got his start, his language was considered exceptionally blue. On movie sets, Fields was notorious for improvising dialogue, often adding profanities that had to be edited out of the final film. During the filming of Never Give a Sucker an Even Break, director Edward F. Klein reportedly kept two scripts, the official one approved by the studio and the Fields version, which was filled with the actor's vulgar improvisations that could never pass the censors. Mae West, herself known for pushing boundaries with sexual innuendo, once remarked that even she was shocked by Fields' language. According to West, during their one film together, My Little Chickadee, Fields constantly suggested line changes that were so filthy they would have gotten us both arrested. West added that Fields seemed genuinely puzzled when his suggestions were rejected. In his later years, as his health declined due to alcoholism, Fields became even less restrained in his language. Visitors to his home reported that he would greet them with creative strings of profanity delivered in his distinctive nasal drawl. Gene Fowler, who visited Fields shortly before his death, recalled that the comedian cursed the universe with such poetic vulgarity that one could almost admire the artistry behind the obscenity. Number 7. Marlene Dietrich, 1901 to 1992. With her sculpted cheekbones and sultry voice, Marlene Dietrich embodied sophisticated European glamour to American audiences. Yet those who knew her personally discovered that beneath her elegant exterior was a woman who could swear fluently in multiple languages. Born in Berlin, Dietrich brought a European frankness about sex and bodily functions that shocked her more puritanical American colleagues. Director Billy Wilder, who worked with Dietrich on A Foreign Affair, recalled that she used vulgar German expressions that would make a Bavarian beer hall blush when things went wrong on set. During her extensive USO tours entertaining troops in World War II, Dietrich reportedly adapted quickly to military language. One officer recalled his surprise at hearing the glamorous star casually using the crudest military slang with the ease of a seasoned sergeant. When asked about it, Dietrich allegedly replied with a vulgar German expression that, when translated, made the officer blush. Ernest Hemingway, a close friend of Dietrich's and no stranger to rough language himself, once commented that Dietrich could outcurse any man I've ever met and do it in at least 4 languages. According to Hemingway, Dietrich's multilingual profanity was so impressive that he sometimes asked her to teach him new expressions, which she did with evident delight. Even in her later years, when she had largely withdrawn from public life, Dietrich maintained her colorful vocabulary. During one of her rare later interviews, when asked about her legendary status, Dietrich reportedly dismissed the question with a vulgar German expression so crude that the interviewer, who understood German, was visibly shocked. When pressed about her language, Dietrich simply shrugged and said, "Glamour without honesty is just pretense." Number 6. Robert Mitchum, 1917 to 1997. With his sleepy eyes and laconic style, Robert Mitchum projected an image of cool detachment on screen. Off-screen, however, he was known for his rebellious attitude, hard-drinking lifestyle, and spectacularly profane vocabulary. Mitchum's brushes with the law, including a famous 1948 arrest for marijuana possession, were just the public face of his bad boy persona. Behind the scenes, colleagues knew him as someone who had elevated swearing to an art form. Director Howard Hawks once commented that Mitchum didn't just use profanity, he orchestrated it like a composer. Mitchum's approach to his craft was notoriously casual, but his language while working was anything but restrained. During the filming of the 1955 thriller The Night of the Hunter, director Charles Laughton was reportedly shocked by Mitchum's continuous stream of profanity between takes, especially since the actor was playing a deranged preacher in the film. Jane Russell, who starred with Mitchum in His Kind of Woman and Macau, recalled that his language was creatively obscene, but noted that there was strange poetry to Bob's profanity. According to Russell, Mitchum could string together curses in combinations no one had ever heard before, a talent that both shocked and impressed his co-stars. Mitchum made no attempt to clean up his language for interviews, leading to numerous headaches for journalists. One reporter from the 1970s recalled that an hour-long interview with Mitchum yielded only 3 sentences that could actually be printed in a family newspaper. The rest, he noted, consisted of the most colorful profanity I've ever encountered, delivered with the timing of a skilled jazz musician. Number 5. Barbara Stanwyck, 1907 to 1990. Barbara Stanwyck portrayed strong, complex women on screen, from the murderous wife in Double Indemnity to the con artist in The Lady Eve. Off-screen, her tough Brooklyn upbringing revealed itself in a vocabulary that could turn the air blue. Orphaned at a young age and raised partly in foster care, Stanwyck developed a hard-edged personality and vocabulary to match. Unlike some stars who adopted refined personas once they achieved fame, Stanwyck never entirely shed her rough-around-the-edge background, which included an impressive command of street language. Director Frank Capra, who worked with Stanwyck on several films early in her career, recalled his surprise at hearing such raw language from such a beautiful woman. According to Capra, when Stanwyck became frustrated with a scene, she would unleash a torrent of profanity that would make a gangster blush. Capra added that her cursing was delivered with such conviction that no one would dare suggest she tone it down. William Holden, who credited Stanwyck with saving his career when they worked together on Golden Boy, admitted he was initially shocked by her vocabulary. In a later interview, Holden recalled that Stanwyck had absolutely no filter and used the crudest language imaginable, but added that this same directness made her an exceptionally honest and helpful colleague. Even as Stanwyck aged and took on the role of matriarch Victoria Barkley in the TV series The Big Valley, she maintained her colorful vocabulary. A crew member from the show recalled that while Stanwyck was utterly professional in her work, her between-takes language remained shockingly profane, creating a stark contrast with her dignified on-screen character. Number 4. Wallace Beery, 1885 to 1949. Wallace Beery specialized in playing rough-hewn characters with hearts of gold, like Long John Silver in Treasure Island and the washed-up boxer in The Champ. Off-screen, colleagues discovered that Beery's real personality was far less endearing, marked by crude behavior and language that matched his intimidating physical presence. Standing 6 feet 1 inch and weighing over 200 pounds, Beery could be physically intimidating, an impression enhanced by his volcanic temper and profane outbursts. Fellow actor Lionel Barrymore once remarked that Beery had the vocabulary of a mule skinner and the charm of a charging rhinoceros, a combination that made him one of Hollywood's most feared personalities. On film sets, Beery was notorious for his crude behavior toward crew members, especially those he considered beneath him in the Hollywood hierarchy. Assistant directors and camera operators recalled that Beery would berate them with strings of obscenities if scenes didn't go exactly as he wanted. One crew member from Viva Villa described Beery's language as consistently and creatively vulgar, delivered at maximum volume. Perhaps the most disturbing were reports of Beery's behavior toward child actors. Jackie Cooper, who co-starred with Beery in The Champ and several other films, later wrote that Beery would deliberately use shocking language around his young co-stars, seemingly amused by their discomfort. According to Cooper, Beery once told him a story so vulgar that the young actor didn't understand half the words, but knew it was inappropriate. Despite his Oscar-winning performances and box office success, Beery's legacy has been tarnished by accounts of his off-screen crudeness. Director William Wellman, who worked with Beery on several films, summed up the actor's dual nature. On screen, he could make you cry with his portrayal of tenderness. Off screen, he could make you cry with his cruelty and vulgarity. Number 3. Clara Bow, 1905 to 1965. Clara Bow, Hollywood's original It Girl, captivated audiences with her vivacious flapper persona in the 1920s. Behind her carefully manufactured image was a young woman from the Brooklyn slums whose rough upbringing was reflected in her earthy language and uninhibited behavior. Unlike many stars who came from privileged backgrounds, Beau grew up in poverty with a mentally ill mother and absent father. This background gave her a vocabulary and attitude that shocked Hollywood's elite when she burst onto the scene. Director Victor Fleming, who had a brief affair with Beau, recalled that she spoke like someone who had grown up on the toughest streets of New York. Because she had. Beau made little attempt to disguise her background or modify her behavior to meet Hollywood standards. At industry parties, she would shock other guests by using slang and profanity common in Brooklyn of her youth but rarely heard in genteel Hollywood circles. Actress Louise Brooks, a contemporary of Beau's, wrote that Clara used words I had never heard before, and I wasn't exactly a sheltered violet. Studio executives were both enthralled by Beau's natural sex appeal and alarmed by her unfiltered personality. Paramount Pictures reportedly assigned a full-time minder to Beau, whose job was to prevent the star from using her colorful vocabulary during interviews. According to Hollywood legend, this effort was largely unsuccessful, as Beau would often elude her handler and speak frankly to journalists, resulting in quotes that had to be heavily edited before publication. As her career progressed, the strain of maintaining a public persona at odds with her natural personality took a toll on Beau. In private, she became even more uninhibited, with friends reporting that her language grew increasingly crude as she fought against the studio system's constraints. Director Dorothy Arzner, one of the few female directors of the era, noted that Beau cursed like a sailor, but did it with such natural charm that it was almost endearing. Number 2. James Cagney, 1899 to 1986. James Cagney brought kinetic energy and street-tough authenticity to his gangster roles that revolutionized screen acting. Off-screen, the real Cagney retained much of his Hell's Kitchen upbringing, including a colorful vocabulary that he deployed strategically throughout his career. Raised in the rough-and-tumble Lower East Side of Manhattan, Cagney absorbed the language of the streets from an early age. Unlike some actors who completely reinvented themselves for Hollywood, Cagney maintained aspects of his urban background, including a facility with profanity that surprised those who knew him only as a polished professional. Director Raoul Walsh, who worked with Cagney on White Heat and other films, recalled that the actor usually maintained a professional demeanor, but when provoked, could unleash a barrage of street language that reminded everyone of his tough upbringing. According to Walsh, these eruptions were rare but impressive, delivered with the same intensity Cagney brought to his performances. Cagney's battles with Warner Brothers over contracts and creative control occasionally revealed his rougher side. During one heated negotiation, Cagney reportedly told studio head Jack Warner exactly what he could do with his contract, using language so colorful that the stenographer refused to record it. When Warner expressed shock at his language, Cagney allegedly replied, "I learned it in your movies, Jack." Later in life, as Cagney retreated to his farm and reduced his film appearances, he became more measured in his public language. However, close friends noted that in private, the street-smart kid from New York could still emerge, especially when discussing politics or the film industry. Actor Pat O'Brien, a longtime friend of Cagney's, noted that even in his 70s, Cagney could still curse with the authentic rhythm of the New York streets when something really angered him. Number 1. Mae West, 1893 to 1980. Mae West built her career in sexual innuendo and double entendres, delivered with her trademark drawl and knowing smile. While her on-screen language was constrained by censors, the real Mae West was considerably more direct in her choice of words when cameras weren't rolling. Before becoming a film star, West had a long career in vaudeville and on Broadway, where she became accustomed to the crude language common backstage. Unlike many female performers who maintained a ladylike facade, West was known for giving as good as she got in the rough-and-tumble world of live entertainment. West's battles with censors were legendary, as she constantly pushed the boundaries of acceptable content in her films. What few people realized was that the lines that made it to the screen were often toned-down versions of much more explicit dialogue West had originally written. Director Henry Hathaway, who worked with West on I'm No Angel, recalled that her original scripts were breathtakingly vulgar and had to be extensively revised before filming. West's personal life reflected the frank sexuality of her public persona. Well into her senior years, she surrounded herself with young, muscular men whom she openly admired and pursued. Her comments about these companions were reportedly far more explicit than her famous screen innuendos, often shocking visitors to her apartment with their graphic nature. Even in her final years, West maintained her characteristic frankness about sexual matters. During interviews to promote her final film, Sextet, made when she was in her 80s, West reportedly shocked journalists with explicit comments about her male co-stars that were far too vulgar for publication. When one interviewer expressed surprise at her language, West allegedly replied with her famous line, "I used to be Snow White, but I drifted." These 18 icons of Hollywood's golden age remind us that the gap between public image and private reality has always existed in the entertainment industry. Behind the glamorous facades crafted by studio publicity departments were real people, often from humble or rough backgrounds, whose authentic selves were far more complex and colorful than their polished screen personas suggested. While today's celebrities live in an era of social media and diminished privacy, where their every misstep is documented and shared worldwide, the stars of Hollywood's golden age benefited from a more controlled media environment that allowed them to maintain their carefully crafted images despite their behind-the-scenes behavior. The vulgar language and shocking behavior of these classic stars reminds us that human nature remains constant, even as societal standards and media landscapes evolve. The next time you watch a pristine, elegant performance from Hollywood's golden age, remember that the sophisticated star on screen might have had a vocabulary that would make today's most explicit rappers blush. Perhaps that's the most enduring lesson from Hollywood's history. The line between image and reality has always been carefully managed, and the most compelling stars have often been those harboring the most striking contradictions. As Mae West might have said, "It's not the men in your life that matter, it's the life in your men." And the same could be said for the authentic, unfiltered personalities behind the silver screen's most enduring icons.